What's up, guys? Welcome to Podcast 412, Fight for Purity. A bold way of looking at challenges that young people are facing. We'll talk about the naked truth of life and how to handle the problems you're thinking but not talking about. So strap in, get ready for another great podcast.
This podcast episode is not considered age appropriate due to discussion of drugs and alcohol and other sensitive topics. Parent or guardian discretion is advised. Thank you.
Welcome back to episode 8 of season 2. We're going to kind of recap on past episodes regarding speech and boundaries and everything. But first, before we get into all of that, we are going to have some insight into sight.
Our fun fact of the day is about our eyeballs. And so the difference between men and women is we literally see things differently. So apparently men have thicker retinas and larger M cells than women. The M cells are responsible for tracking the movement of objects, where women have more P cells, which are responsible for identifying objects as well as analyzing textures and colors. I think that's why guys can have better reaction when something comes flying to their face, and girls are better at no, those two pinks are different.
Those are different.
And a guy is like, it's the same color.
And it probably explains that whole. Do you remember that whole thing? That dress that was blue and black.
And to some people it was gold. Yeah.
Well, I saw this one where it was about a shoe, and it's which nail polish goes with the shoe better, and it's kind of like a purpley shade, but like a pink shade. And then there's a comment. It's this is taking me back to whenever we had to choose the color of the dress. And it's and they're those two aren't the same colors. And it's no,
they're two different shades. Yes.
So so we see differently. Literally, yeah. Guys and girls literally see differently. So I have something that I wanted to add to that before we get kind of started talking. I looked this up, and it says words people use can predict their gender 92% of the time. It says, Unger said, for example, women tend to use the following words on Facebook more often: shopping, excited, love you, yay, and birthday. And it says men tend to use more profanity, as well as words Xbox, girlfriend, war, YouTube, and PS3. So it says words can help pinpoint whether someone is extroverted. They use words or phrases like can't wait, chilling, party, weekend, girls. Introverts favor anime, internet, manga, computer, sci, Pokemon, and others. So I thought that was
so called out.
Yeah.
How I use what words I use.
Yeah. And so just to show you that your speech says so much about who you are. And then it said another thing. It said it says people with high stress talk online about pain, anxiety, being tired, hurting, depression, and headaches. And it says low stress people convey enthusiasm about today, vacations, breakfast, and being pumped. So so it just tells you that we talk in so many ways, in so many ways, and it really does define who you are, So
even through writing, I know with criminal cases sometimes, they can really show the linguistics of it. I forgot what it's called, of the professional of what somebody actually studies, how people write and how people talk. It shows, it may look the same, people can try to forge it, but in the end it's no, they do this differently. So it's something minuscule that is pinpointed out that we all do different.
Even your handwriting, they can tell of it all because he doesn't do that little whatever. So it wasn't him. So but kind of what we're going to do today is kind of recap a little bit on the past episodes. And I think one of the questions that a lot of kids or a lot of people ask is who am I? And that's a big thing that, especially I think when you're still in middle school, high school, and even in college, you're really trying to find your identity in so many things, and You know, I thought this was just interesting because, you know, even as women and men, we talk differently, you know, or, you know, if you're under stress or you're somebody that worries a lot, you know, just the words that come out of your mouth are so different, you know. And I know we talked about, we did a lot of episodes talking about purity, talking about boundaries, you know, all these different things, you know. And one of the things I was kind of curious about was, like, how people were able to push boundaries with you. You know, I know some of the things we talked about were like physically, you know, we have like bubbles, you know, some of us have small bubbles, some of us have bigger ones. And, but I don't know if you guys want to share a little bit, like maybe how people try to push your boundaries, like by talking to you, or how maybe that was, or maybe it wasn't an issue for you, you know, maybe the things that people said to you, maybe it didn't matter, but you know, I feel like words do affect you and how you talk to people or people that talk to you, like what kind of impact that it did it have in your life. You guys got to share, okay? I know it's a difficult, you know, we don't do a lot of deep diving. We kind of stay on the surface sometimes, but I feel like that's important to just kind of, you know, and you know, and you don't have to, you know, it can be like in a good way or in a bad way. You know, I mean, I know, like, one of the things I talked about, I mentioned earlier was I remember when going through a phase in my life where, like, I was really suicidal and, like, had a lot of suicidal thoughts when I was really young. I think I was probably 12, maybe. I would say I was probably, like, 12. I don't know what grade you're in, like middle school. Like, middle school, yeah. But I remember, like, those conversations were conversations that were with myself. You know, I would talk to myself a lot about whether people cared about me, whether my mom cared about me, whether I mattered. Like, I had these conversations with myself. And I know for me, like, those things impacted me. Just me talking to myself, you know. I mean, I guess I talked myself out of it because I never did it, you know. But it was something that was pretty common in my family, that, you know, suicide was just I hate to say common, but it was kind of a common thing, you know, but I didn't. But I know that during that time, I did talk to myself a lot. And then I would kind of repeat things or interpret things that other people said about me or didn't say to me, you know. So I don't know if you guys want to share maybe some event, you know, even if it's funny or not interesting or whatever. So.
I'm sorry. Just leaving you out to dry.
We talked about this earlier.
I guess, I don't know if this goes in, I know earlier kind of back and forth about it, but a lot of stuff that I did, it wasn't like my boundaries were let down, but it was kind of a decision I made with a lack of communication with my mom. And so I would, I guess when I look back at it, it's like I felt not heard by her, or like she wasn't getting it, you know. And so when I was growing up, she would always put herself or men before us. And so, like, out of anger of her not communicating properly with me or listening to me, or even when I think before I've talked about it, when she would tell me, oh, well, just tell me what's going on, and then she would get mad at me for telling her what I was feeling, you know. So I would get upset, and my way of communicating was to lash out and to do stuff that would cause her stress. And so I would do stuff like I would let my boundary down with guys or whatever, and I would talk to them or get in relationships in middle school. I was like 7th grade, I think, when I had my first relationship. 7th or 6th? I think it was 7th. And so, you know, but it was kind of out of rebellion towards her for not paying attention to me. Yeah. So the lack of communication, and it was my fault. I made the choice, you know, but I didn't ever have boundaries growing up either. And I wasn't taught boundaries by my parents because they weren't giving an example of that, you know, or how to live purely. But yeah, so I just made choices out of spite to my mom, and they hurt me in the long run. Because, I mean, she didn't have to deal with the consequences of my actions. I did. Yeah. So that's
and I think that's important. Like you said, when you're not communicating, you know, you kind of, like you said, you act out your lack of communication that you have, you know, or if you don't have, like, healthy relationships, then you go find unhealthy ones. I know I did that too. Like if I didn't, I didn't have a healthy relationship with my mom, and I didn't have a dad in my life, so there was no communication with him at all. So I went seeking, somewhere else, to find, and it's usually, and I think those things like lead, like you said, to bad decisions. So
Yeah. My misery loves company. So if you can find a bunch of miserable people to
You can
kind
be
of join
miserable together.
in, yeah, join in all your stupidity and stuff that you go through. And I think during that time too, I kind of brought Angelique in on stuff with me. Not like made her do stuff, but just like brought her along. When I would go do stuff to get out of stuff, and the decisions she made. I mean, I didn't force her to make those decisions, but I brought her along, which wasn't being a very good family member or a good example.
Yeah, I guess people always try. That's the biggest thing about speech is people are always gonna try and talk you into things. Like my example is I had a friend of mine. He was surprised that like I was saying earlier, he was surprised I wasn't like sleeping around. This was in high school, and so he was like trying to convince me it's not that big of a deal, because my biggest thing was like, well, I don't want to get pregnant because I'm a kid and I don't want to do that. And then his biggest thing, well, that's what birth control is for, and condoms, and then he's like trying to, quote unquote, educate me on the things that I can do in case I get pregnant or to prevent pregnancy. I mean, at the time, like, I thank God I had like boundaries, so I was like kind of just looking at him like he's stupid. I was like, or I could just not, and that 100% guarantees me that I'm not gonna get pregnant if I just don't do it. Like versus taking all these risks of birth control, of condoms, breaking, or an abortion. Like, but he was trying to convince me, But thankfully, I had a boundary. But I know for someone else who didn't have that, they probably would have been like, you know what, that you're so right. There's like so many options, man. Like, yeah.
and they make it sound like it's like this easy decision.
Yeah.
Like, if you do this and you do, like if that's the only consequence, is that, well, as long as you take this pill, or as long as, then you're going to be okay, and it's like you said, they're trying to convince you of something, but they make it seem like it's not a big deal, just.
Yeah,
just
but he
dive
doesn't
in.
take in, like, he wasn't, because there's other stuff, like, when you're with somebody, like
relationships.
yeah, like emotionally, mentally, like
Yeah.
that ties into it, that a pill is not going to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm still going to have to see that person, especially if it's from someone at school. Like,
Yeah. Well, I have instances where one of my friends, she was easily persuaded to do stuff. So, I mean, I had a lack of boundaries, but I think growing up and seeing like everything my mom went through and my dad on, drugs and alcohol, I had a boundary there of like, I wasn't going to go any further. I wasn't just going to go party. I had to know someone there and to know kind of my limits, I guess. But I had a friend who didn't really know that, and I talked about her before, but she she made decisions in drinking and the whole sleeping around thing, and like the consequences of that. Like, she was in violent relationships. One of the guys, she drank too much and she didn't know, like she's just making stupid decisions, and then I would always have to go pick her up, and to see the aftermath of stuff, and she didn't know whether it was like if she decided to do it or not. So I had to take her to the doctors, and so nobody does talk about that stuff. Or like if you tell someone to stop, or like maybe you took one hit but you're like, no, I don't want it, then I think when you let those boundaries down, people continue to push it. Then it's a bigger fight, whether it's drinking or sneaking out or ditching school. I know a big thing right now, like with middle schoolers, as my kids are telling me, like these kids just ditch school, and I guess just decisions, all these little decisions lead to bigger decisions. And I don't know if, when I was younger, I didn't understand the consequences of that, like ditching. And then your friends are willing to push you more and more.
I think as a kid, there's that thrill of breaking the rules.
Yeah.
And then getting away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it. Woohoo. We had talked about that. I remember in an early one where, like, if there's no consequences right away, we're like, cool, we can do it again. And it's like you said, there's always those people that are going to push you because you're like, well, I did it last time. I did it before. It's fine. And I think that goes like back to what you said about like who am I? I think that's part of the reason why we like break rules and why we let people push us or try and convince us into doing other things, is because we're trying to figure out
what kind of person we are. Am I the kind of person that isn't, they make it seem like if you don't do it, it's like I'm not an exciting person. I'm boring. I follow the rules, you know. I don't do those things, you know. Oh my gosh. But like, I think as a kid, we don't think about what kind of person that makes us. You know, I had mentioned it earlier about how like there's like, you know, there's all those stereotypes like in high school and middle school, you know, the cheerleader, the jock, the nerd, you know, the emo kid, you know, all that. And I think as kids we would be like, well, I want to be like that person, not because like just because either they were popular or because you liked the way they dressed, and so you're like, I want to dress like that person, and which means if I'm going to dress like that person, I have to act like that person. But you're not thinking about what kind of person that is. You know, because there's like all those stereotypes like about cheerleaders and jocks and popular people that they're popular, but not everybody really likes them because they tend to be like the person who's like a jerk, or they're the kind of people that backstab you, they lie about you, or they make you feel like crap. You know, they make those like backhanded comments about the way you look or your weight, you know, the way you're dressing.
Backhanded compliments.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh, like that skirt is so cute. It'd be like so much cuter if you lost like 5 pounds, you know? You know, so there's
It's like Mean Girls.
It's like Mean Girls, you know, but that's like, you're not thinking, you know, I want to be that kind of person. I want to be that person that talks crap about everybody, that nobody can trust with their secrets, you know, that tells lies. You're thinking, oh, I just want to be accepted by those things or by those people, you know. And, you know, when kids make fun of each other, they're not thinking I'm being like a horrible person to this other human being. You're just thinking, I want to make everybody else laugh. I don't care about this particular person because I don't care about their feelings. As long as everybody else accepts me, then it's okay. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing about like that whole question of who am I? We're always trying to be accepted from middle school till like you're 20 something. Sometimes you're 30 somethings, you know, just like you're trying to figure out what kind of person am I? I want to be accepted for who I am. But a lot of times we're not thinking about what kind of person we are. We're just thinking, I want to be accepted, so I'm going to be like these people so that I don't feel rejected. And I think that's, I don't know. Like,
And I think we went into like a lot of that too, was like defining, like that's, you know, that was one of the definitions that I liked when we talked about purity, was it all the decisions that you're making, even like I said, with your talking or your boundaries or whatever, those things are all like defining who you are. I mean, just like when I read about, you know, your speech defines like whether you're female or whether you're male, or it defines whether, you know, you have a lot of anxiety or you don't have a lot of anxiety, you know. And it just depends, like what we said, it's what are you allowing, you know, who are you letting deposit into you, you know, what kinds of people, what are the things that you're listening to, again, you know, the things that people are saying, you know, like what are you like embracing, you know. It's because you got to embrace something. But, you know, the thing that's bad about today is that, you know, everything that you see like on social media, it's always changing, you know, and so then you change technically. You don't really change, but you embrace like a different idea, because everything changes all the time. Nothing stays constant like on social media.
Yeah,
There's
like
always
the popular music, the way you dress, like that whole, what do you mean, like the styles now? It's like what, 90s, 80s, you know?
It's like there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
When it's a constant battle of trying to figure out who you are too, or like what things you're trying to battle within yourself too, because even in middle school, I remember some of my friends, they had a friend from high school come pick them up, you know, and I had to make a decision like whether I'm gonna stay in school or ditch with them. I didn't see the point. I was like, I'm gonna go to class, you know. And even the way that other people view you based on who you surround yourself with, because like I remember they called me out of class and they're like asking me, like, because they had called people's parents and stuff, and I was like, I was where I needed to be, but just because I was friends with them and like they constantly did that stuff, they like questioned me, and they had to call all my teachers, make sure I was in all my classes that day. And I was like, I was there, you know. And I remember just sitting in the office like so upset. And then another instance was I guess in a battle of yourself, of I guess the boundaries that you set and keeping them. I didn't have a lot, but there was one time there was this kid in class and he was nerdy and kind of weird, you know. And everyone picked on him. All the cool kids picked on him and were mean to him. And I had to make a decision at that moment, like, because I felt bad for him. Within me, I felt like so bad for him, you know. And I had a decision to make. And I wasn't like popular, but I wasn't like dorky, or, you know.
You weren't a nerd.
Yeah, I wasn't a nerd. So like I would kind of stay on the fence, you know. And I hung out with everyone when I was in 7th grade, I believe it was, or 6th grade. But everyone was picking on that kid and making fun of him, and I had to like tell them all to just shut up and leave him alone. And like then I started working with him, and I was like, gosh, he's like actually funny and stuff, you know. And he's kind of like, what the, you know, because he was like the nerdy kid, you know, that he was really weird, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, but in that instance of even defining who you are based on the actions that you take, because then sometimes I feel like you have to keep this persona up, but you can always change it. You know, you don't have to continue to do those things or continue to hang out with the wrong crowd. And I think sometimes we just get stuck there.
Yeah, well, and I mean, even if you do decide to change it, the people that you're changing from, they're not going to like it. Yeah. So they're going to be all whatever. They're going to say what they're going to say. But I mean, when you think about it, why would you want to hang out with people like that who are just going to trash talk you if you decide, I don't want to talk like that anymore, or I don't want to be that kind of person anymore because you decided I'm not going to talk like that. I'm going to put up my boundaries, you know. And it's like we said before in the last season about how like putting up boundaries means that sometimes you got to cut people off, you know. And it's like you said, like that whole communication, that speech, it's not just your words, it's how you act, it's what you do. And
It makes a difference. I was thinking of when I remember learning this when I was in, I think it was high school. I know it's not deep, but they were trying to sell shampoos, and they doubled their sales. And how do you think they doubled their sales? And any guesses?
they sold more.
I don't know. All they did, because if you look at the shampoo bottles, they all say wash, rinse, and repeat. So they put repeat on it. So you were using more shampoo. You didn't have to wash your hair twice. But because they put the word repeat, people started, okay.
They had to
Needing
use
more.
They had it, yeah. So
Use it
you
more.
wash, you rinse, and then you repeat. So then you wash your hair twice, you know. And so, but just one word, just putting it in there, made a difference.
Yeah,
you
mess
know?
with your mind.
Yeah. So you know, but you don't really. You think, oh, I guess I got to wash my hair twice. You don't. But I think it's still on bottles today, because it sells more shampoo, not because you're gonna be cleaner. It's just, it was a marketing, you know, strategy to make you buy shampoo more often. So they didn't change anything. They didn't make a better product. They just put the word repeat. And so, but that just shows you how
Important words are.
you know, the words that you say, the words that people say to you, how you communicate with your parents, how you communicate with friends. And so I think, even with strangers or whatever, and having boundaries, and just all those things, you know. So just be mindful, and, you know, just keep it in mind, and what you're saying, and who you're talking to, and who's talking to you.
And when we come back, I'll share a funny story about different ways you can react to people who talk to you.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining us.
We'll see you guys next
time. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Join us for our next podcast. You can contact us through Instagram at podcast412 or email us at 412fight@gmail.com. See you next time.